Hello and welcome to the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley's program for this week. Every week we bring to you a new program about education, technology, innovation, and humanitarian service. My name is Mitty Chang. I'm the president of this Rotary Club, and I'd like to introduce one of our members on this call who is going to introduce our guest speaker this week. To my left, as I see it, is our member Christy Governson, who is in Missoula, Montana. I might pronounce it wrong. But Christy is a professional speaker with the Governson Group. And Christy's also a membership nerd in Rotary, a fellow nerd. She's been with Rotary for several years now and was speaking on the Rotary speaking circuit at different conferences. And that's how I met Christy. We bonded. I consider her one of my mentors. She's awesome. She's hilarious. And if you ever get a chance, I would recommend getting a conversation with her. So Christy, please introduce our guest speaker.
Awesome. Thanks, Mitty. And Seth, welcome. I get the great honor today to introduce Seth Carlstrom, who's from Bozeman, Montana, which is about 3 hours away from Missoula. Just a little fun fact, Bozeman's actually where I was born.
I didn't know that. That's
Wow. So Bozeman, Montana. Seth is gracious enough to be our guest speaker today. I actually have known Seth now for, I would say it's been about 6 months. We actually haven't known each other very long, but we've had 3 very distinct interactions that I would say have developed into a really nice friendship. The first time I met Seth, he was competing at the John Raffato Startup Challenge here at the University of Montana in Missoula, and I was a judge. And I got to see Seth in action presenting his product and business with his business partner Shay, at that time during the second round of judging. And he'll probably explain more about the product and their business because that's part of his story. But what was really fascinating for us was the product was great, but then as the guys started to do their Q&A and tell their own story, they had us floored. I mean, there were people in the room, myself included, crying. I'm not joking. We were crying. And when they finally made it to the final round, which they did, they just missed out on the first place prize. They came in second, but they won the People's Choice Award. They brought home the most money, and we loved them. We thought they were great and was blown away. What was fascinating about where their project came from was a class that they were in at Montana State University in Bozeman called DSEL, which you say it, Diesel, which stands for Design Sandbox for Engaged Learning. Do I have that correct, Seth?
Yep.
And so the second time I got to meet Seth is a few months later. I was in Billings, Montana, which is even further away from both of us because Montana is a big state, at Innovate, Montana, where he and I bonded for hours telling Shania Twain jokes.
Yeah.
That's how Seth and I became friends.
Yeah.
And I also got to meet the instructor for this diesel program because Seth and his instructor and a few other people were doing a panel about this really interesting program at Montana State University. And I got to meet his instructor, Mida Newhouse, and she's a graphic design professor, and she's great. Anyway, the third time I got to meet Seth is he agreed to have a really long conversation with me about this particular program. I got to ask a ton of questions, and I got to really learn his deeper why and what he's doing on the planet, and I thought it was fascinating. And when he told me his story during that conversation, I said, you've got to speak to our Rotary Club. You've got to speak to our Rotary Club. So with that, I introduced him to Mitty, and here we are today. So take it away, Seth.
Wow. I think we should leave it. That was great.
Shania Twain, right?
Yeah, Shania Twain. I made a Shania pun that I don't know if you heard it or not, but anyways, it doesn't matter. But no, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the chance to speak today. It feels funny to me to be asked to speak to a group of professionals. So I really am grateful and I'm humbled by the experience. But I prepared loosely some things to talk about, but for the most part, it's a story. It's a long story that starts a long, long time ago, but then there are lots of other stories. So I'm going to try and keep on track. But if we go all the way back, we were talking about diesel. And diesel was kind of the culmination of this experience that I had in college. I got a large scholarship. That's why I went to Montana State. I had some other options, but I went to Montana State, and it's my dad's alma mater. I didn't feel that bad about it. I love Montana. I really got into skiing, hunting, fishing, those kinds of things, because that's what trips my trigger. I like going outside. Right now, we were just talking about it. It's 0 degrees in Bozeman, Montana, but I started out doing engineering, and I'd always been competent in the sciences. I've always been good with my hands, good at building things. So people said, you should be an architect, or you should be an engineer. And then artist was out of the question. But I actually did grow up doing fine arts, charcoal and graphite on white or colored paper. Usually is my forte. Some painting, some sculpture. But so I grew up kind of doing that and didn't know quite what I wanted to do. I it was a Rotary Club scholarship that I interviewed for in Billings, where I'm from Billings. Sorry, should have said that. And this man said, well, you're interested in product design, because that kind of came up in conversation. He said, you should meet this man. I met a guy who used to work for Oldsmobile. He was the head of the Oldsmobile product design division. So kind of this idea of industrial design, product design came into being, and I started to go to school. So chose MSU, came here for mechanical engineering. When I kind of got my feet wet, I realized I don't want to be a mechanical engineer, which is, good and bad. I love it. I actually I do have a degree in mechanical engineering now. But the story kind of goes that came here right before school started, and I talked to a man called Nick Ward, and Nick Ward's in the industrial engineering department at MSU. And that started this kind of snowball process of, can I fake an industrial design degree while going to engineering school? And he had worked for Jaguar. He heads the Western Transportation Institute. He's a usability specialist. It's how does the user use things? And so he was he's a cool guy. He just has swagger. And I love him because at the same time that he doesn't give a rip kind of what he's teaching, he very much is very cool about that. He very much cares what you learn. And so anyways, Nick got me started on this track to kind of fake this degree. And it was about 2013 that I decided that I was going to drop out of college, because I was like, there's no fit. The Cinderella moment didn't happen. And then it did. All of a sudden, I came back to school for various reasons, but I came back to school and I met I met 2 people, and then a third thing, this diesel idea came into my life. I met a guy named David Yakos, who I actually work for. I'm at the office right now. His desk on the other side of this wall. But I met David Yakos, and he offered me a mentorship in which for unpaid mentorship, that I just kind of got privy to the product development process. And then I met another guy named Richard Siberel, who used to be the head of technical apparel at Patagonia for many years. And both of them, I reached out kind of with the same message. I said, hey, can I just take you and your wife out to dinner and we can talk shop, And both of them said, nah, you should just come in. And so this was kind of the start of my real education as I see it. And that being a theme in the Rotary Club chapter, in your Rotary Club chapter, I think that's kind of the moral of the story, is what is education. That's what I've learned. That's my education, is learning what education is. I don't know. One thing led to another, and I went from the mentorship with Salient. David is co-owner of Salient with Steve Sanford, and went from a mentorship to an internship to working part-time, and now I work full-time, actually. I have come on staff full-time for Salient, so it's 2.5 years for me here. But through there, I was going to school, we're 18 to 20 credits and each school is different, but it was quite a workload. And then I was also working here, and that's how I was paying my way through school, because through just, funny random happenstances, I lost my scholarship. And that was it was one of the best things, I think, that happened to me, because it forced me to go out and get a job. And I worked for a little bit in sprinkler installation, but then I got an engineering job. One engineering job led to another engineering job, led to another engineering job, got into product design, and then that's kind of the end of it for me. I'm sold on product design. But back to the story. I can diatribe all day. The third part of the trifecta was diesel. I'd been kind of grinding through, trying to take art courses, I took art, architecture, psychology, all the engineering courses that I had to. And it was a lot of work to try and fake it. There's a lot of sweet talking, a lot of kind of just complaining until people do what I want, to give me credits and things. And instead, I ended up I saw this poster. There was one poster in the whole engineering program. I'm sorry. I forget that sometimes that people aren't, don't know every detail of my life. So MSU, Montana State, is a very good engineering school, actually. We're not an MIT type, an Ivy or anything, but we're second most hired by Boeing, besides UW. And basically, Boeing and Los Alamos National Labs, that's the kind of engineers that we make, are highly technical, highly trained number monkeys, is what I call them. But this is kind of the environment that I'm in, but I'm also an artist, and what do I do? So there's one poster on the main floor of the engineering building. The engineering, it's huge. It's a huge building. There's one poster for this class called Diesel. And I don't even remember what it said, but I remember reading it and going, "Oh my gosh, I have to go there," So I went over to Maida Newhouse, who was mentioned earlier. Went over to her office and knocked on the door, and she never met me. And I said, it was the day before. Actually, no, I think it was the day that the applications were due, and mine was going to be late. So that's what I was asking her about. Was this, hey, can I be late? And she said, I don't even remember what we talked about. She said something like, "You're really charming." Okay, fine, And so I turned in my application, and I actually applied twice. I applied as an engineer and as an artist, because I forgot a detail. I had switched from mechanical engineering into graphic design. And I did that for a year. I switched into the other program, which was great fun. But I did realize that for all of the artistic side of me, I really enjoy the stimulus of a more rigorous workload. So join Diesel, and here's where I guess the rubber meets the road, and what Christy was introducing is we designed a shower chair. The Diesel class, is based after D School, Stanford D School. Actually, Dr. Patel at D School was a big part of its development, and it's like I said, it was the culmination of there was Nick Ward and a few other professors in engineering were kind of trying to breach the gap between the engineering and the art buildings, which are actually on totally opposite sides of campus. So these two, there are people in each group that are like, okay, we got to come together, because if somebody wants to do product design, and you can't separate those two. In the modern marketplace, it has to be beautiful and it has to function. Why aren't we on that bandwagon? And then there were the traditionalists. One professor I can think of in particular, and I will dare not name him, but I got into an argument with him in front of 70 of my peers because I accused him of just making Boeing monkeys, which is fine. They make a great living. So, but then there are the traditional artists too that are like, well, the arts. The engineers, they're much too rigid, But there's this sect underground that's trying to come together. So Diesel was that, and it revolves around that the Diesel or the D School's empathize. I wrote it down. I apologize for having to read it. The empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test, and then it's a circle. It's a cycle. So Diesel, basically, you came in, there was a grade, but you didn't know your grade until they gave it to you at the end. And you were encouraged, they said, like, first day, like, fail as much as you can. Please, this is what this is for. You're the first class. Just try it out. So we have a lot of good products, a lot of good times come out of there, but our final product was an open design prompt that said, redefine what it's like to get older. They called it the third act. Redefine the third act. And we went, what does that mean? And they said, exactly. So we went to the old folks home, the retirement home here in town, and we walked around and asked the nurse word for word, what are your problems? And her face lit up, and she said the first problem, which ended up being the final problem that we tackled. She said, it's very hard to give people with dementia or Alzheimer's showers. And okay, she showed us a picture of this PVC chair that it's 300. So later, as we developed this business model and whatnot, come to find out it's a $350 item. It's made of PVC and like some sort of like diver's mesh. It's just not worth it. And the whole deal behind it, or the thing that really appealed to us, was on the empathize side. One, normal people have an incredibly hard time, cognitive people, normal cognition, have a harder time empathizing with people that have wacky cognition, that can't see the world the way that we do. So we decided that, one, that was interesting. Two, there's two users. There's that user, and then there's the actual user, the caregiver, who probably actually weighs more on how that chair is used and how it affects the usability of it. And so we designed this chair, and we made it so that it would take away as many negative stimuli as possible. We prototyped roughly what it would be. We presented it to the class. Everybody loved it. It was great. We got an A. It was awesome. And we shelved it because what are we going to do? Two of the four people graduated, and then the other two, I was going into my my fifth year of engineering. So went into my fifth year, and Shay was going into his final year of graphic design. At this point, I was really working a lot with Salient. I was on staff working part-time. And then Richard, the other part of the story is that Richard Sibrel that I mentioned, Mr. Patagonia, well, he does much more than Patagonia, but that's just the way to describe him. But he taught me, he took me under his wing and taught me how to do technical apparel and bags, which is actually what I specialize in now. I do outdoor gear design mostly. Most of my day is that. And again, just because I'm tall and skinny and had to make clothes that fit me, and then one thing led to another, and here we are making money. So it's great. But back to Second Nature, we shelved the project, and then it wasn't until for the first time ever, Capstone at Montana State offered the self-sponsored Capstone option. My Capstone happened to end up coinciding with Shay's senior thesis, and so I conned my roommate into being my partner on the project, and we designed the flow mechanism for the chair to spray water out over the victim. We just referred to it's actually the user, the occupant, but we refer to them as the victim. But yeah, we designed this chair, and that was when I kind of complained to that guy and kind of ruffled some feathers, and we had some fun. But part of the deal was that we had to we had to also walk through the Blackstone Launchpad. Blackstone, the organization, basically an entrepreneurship incubator. We had to design an actual business plan, business model. And so we did. And we did that with Blackstone. Shay was in on that. And one of the the things that was really helpful to us was a man named Les Craig, who's I think he's the director, is his title, of Blackstone MSU. If it wasn't for him, I don't think that we would have ever done it. But he just kept pushing us, and he kept being like, hey, you should do this Rafado thing. I can see that I'm running a little bit short on time, but if I can tell that story, I guess, somehow if people want to know. But we did end up doing very well. We came out with this chair. It's part of the way through development. We're trying to push it a little bit further, but we came into Rafado kind of not knowing what we were doing. Neither of us are business majors, and everybody else is a business major. And we just let it out. We laid it all on we left nothing to be said. And we came away with second place. Second place, best undergraduate startup plan, most innovative product, and people's choice. And so we went forward, and we took it through looking at what it would take to develop it all the way. A big obstacle to us was the FDA, actually, but we're still trying to push that through. So, anyways, moral of the story: education, innovation, education, entrepreneurship. That's two things I've heard associated with your chapter. If it weren't for mentorship and for great people that took the time to entertain my wild ideas, it would have been nigh impossible for me to get to where I wanted to go. And that was kind of my education, is that the institutionalized that was a real buzzword. Wow, I apologize. But the institutionalized kind of education, it doesn't do much more good than to give you information. If you really want to go and take that and do something else, you really need the people that like the Diesel program, like the mentors that have raised me up, and even my family was a huge part of that. But it's all been all that to say, education to me is much more than just the information. It was the freedom to try things and go, oh my gosh, that didn't work. Which was a huge part of the Rafado competition, actually. And then to realize that, what I'm good at is not necessarily my passion, but it's passionate to me. It's a passion of mine to do what I'm good at. So that's kind of all over the place, but that's the baseline of where I'm at. And now I am doing product design for a living. I'm on staff doing product design consulting in fabric goods and beyond, and I have my engineering degree. But it was a wild ride. And it was access to education was a huge part of it. So anyways, I think I'm about at my limit.
Awesome. Yay. Thank you so much for taking the time to present to us. Really appreciate that. I was muted, but I was definitely enjoying your presentation.
Perfect. Yeah. That's what I seek to do.
Nice.
Is making people laugh. So
I love it. So I'm going to start off our Q&A session, and then I'll hop over to Christy. But I wanted to know a little bit more about where you are now in terms of product design. Do you feel like what you've learned in your mechanical engineering degree in college, is that something that you take into play with your work today? Or do you mostly find that it's really just been your past experiences in the work industry, as in your jobs or your internships, that have really taught you everything you know today? Yeah,
that's a really good question, because it is, and I've had to answer that a couple times now. And it's sad enough as it is. I don't use my engineering degree very often. We do occasionally, have the. I use some of the engineering intuition that I learned, such as where stress concentrations are, things like that. I haven't done a calculation in a little while. But what college is really good for, and what I do use every day, is and I think everybody can agree, it teaches you how to work and how to get things done, which you might not have known otherwise. It also taught me how to learn more than I did know, and how to, I don't know, I would say that my work experiences and the experiences of working with people and kind of moving in and out of a system has been much more valuable to me so far. But,
and as a quick follow-up to that, at what point in your life did you find out that product design was what you wanted to do?
I was 17 years old, and it was in the back of Popular Mechanics. It was in the back of Road and Track. And they had a picture. It was actually an ad, like a I don't even know what they call it. It's not a centerfold. That's not what it was. But it was in the center near the fold, and it was advertising, I think, the Savannah Art Institute or something, and it had a car, and it said industrial design, and I was like, my gosh, I don't even know what that is. So I Googled it, and I found out what it was, and that was when I was like, my God, that is what I want to do. I think now as I think back, I did some pre-engineering courses in high school, and I was designing soccer cleats, things like that as part of the kind of just what I wanted to do. They were just letting us play with the software kind of, but it goes all the way back to a friend of mine and I, when we grew up. His mom was a fine artist, and that's who taught me a lot of what I know. We would see a movie like, I don't know, Star Wars. It's easy. Star Wars, and then we would be like, well, I kind of like that armor, but I would like this other armor, and then we would draw it, and then we would make it out of cardboard, and it'd be atrocious, but it was still ours, and we got to have this whole imaginary world that we would design. So that was the beginning, but yeah, I do remember that magazine ad was when I went, that's what I want to do. And then it wasn't until that was when I thought I wanted to do industrial design. Product design and development came when I actually entered this world, when I started getting involved with Salient. And I realized that it's not even so much the design. I love the design. I love the nitty gritty and figuring it out, but the development, the whole cycle from ideation through the art stages, design engineering, prototyping, all the way through when you consult and engage with the factory and then get that product into their hands. I like the whole thing. So anyways.
Nice. It's kind of like you're creating a baby.
It's a little bit like it, yeah. We how many did we work on last year? I think we had 176 products that we worked on, or maybe some odd products. So you have to kill your darling sometimes and then move on to the next darling. But that's okay.
Fair enough. Christy.
So what I think is so fascinating, and I think this is, and it's taken me a long time to kind of ruminate on, like I said, I've kind of experienced you in these sort of three different capacities, and I have finally, knowing that you were going to come speak to our club, I kind of put my thinking cap on, like, what is it that is so fascinating about what you're doing? And the best way that I can articulate it is that you, in this world where a lot of, I want to say, invention and, sort of this new rapid ability to create new things often lands in the world of technology. Like, that's where we see it most often now. And you're this interesting sort of, you're in like both worlds. You're young and you're in that world of like the new, brand new technologies coming up, but you're also squarely planted in that like old fashioned version of being an inventor, right? Go try something, go make something, see if it works. If it doesn't, even if it does work, but it's not the best, and then toss out the darlings, right? But it's that physical making stuff. And I remember that when we had a very specific conversation where you let me ask all those questions about the diesel program, and you got into if you would be willing to elaborate in the way that you elaborated with me about the importance of being able to go physically make stuff. Mm-hmm. And that is that it, I know that that's important to you, obviously, that's the route you've gone, but how important do you think it is for us, and education and in just our own lives, even for those of us that aren't in school anymore, to go make physical things in the world.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I believe, well, okay, from the top, thank you for what you said. That's very nice. It is, ask anybody around here, I'm kind of an old man. I like to write things on paper and, make calendars on paper, which is really, that's just crazy, But I'm a little bit of a troglodyte, but I also, I do really like kind of seeing what's worth doing. And to me, what's worth doing oftentimes is crafting. I love craft. When I sew, I got into sewing for necessity, and I do it now because I love it. I understand, and I'm not a fashion person. I don't really care for fashion so much as making an article of clothing is something that you need. And especially, so I have a jacket over here that I made. I won't throw it up here, but I'm wearing that in the 0-degree weather. That's incredibly gratifying to me, to be able to walk outside and be warmed by something that I put together with my hands. But craft in general for people, craft, we call it maker, kind of this maker movement. It's kind of, there's been this rebound off of, the period of time where everybody just bought everything. We can talk about from the Industrial Revolution, it's just been a constant change. I think that everybody knows that. And the 50s, everybody, figuring out like big yard, big house. Now people are going small house, all that kind of thing. But one thing remains is that somebody needs to make them. And that's, to me, this, I'll say it like this. Okay, this example, this shirt, my aunt made me this shirt. And she's who taught me how to sew originally. She gave me a shirt once, and for some reason in my mind, I just all of a sudden everything, went bright and just went, somebody puts these together. My gosh, you don't just go buy it on a shelf. That's incredible, And that was she gave me that shirt and I said, can you help me make a ski jacket? And she said, we can sure try. And, now it's just baby stepped all the way up. So for the average person to make something, there's some things that maybe some people shouldn't attempt to make, but to find that thing, to make, to create, is not only, I think that it builds that part of you that needs to be that needs to take care of yourself, that needs to be self-motivated and self-preserving. But I also think that it just teaches you a lot about patience, about what you're not in control of, and about the constraints of, and how much things are worth. We talk about, I'm not going to hit on environmentalism, but wastefulness is a big part of what I grew up. My dad was in the mining industry. He was in the regulatory mining industry. And we have always been a family for conservation of lands and wild places. And if you know how hard it is to put together an article of clothing, you really think a lot harder about throwing it away. And I think that is the most ubiquitous, value that making things spreads to people. So, did that cover it? I can't remember the answer I gave you last time. So
good. That was great.
Okay. Good. Good.
All right, Seth. And then, so I have one final question for you, and then we'll have to wrap up. But what's the favorite part about your job right now?
I'm always a people person deep down. And so there's the selfish part, and then there's the non-selfish part. So I guess like typical, designer, I can't give you a really great answer, just one, I really get satisfaction out of the client's reaction to my work. And usually, actually, I'm kind of pessimistic. I could be better, you know. But you know, when you hand somebody something that was their idea and it's now in their hands, they wig out, and it's wonderful. It's so cool. Such an interesting feeling to, because it's very hands off. You know, you kind of have an idea of what they want, and then you give them what they asked for. And if you've nailed it, it's kind of magical almost. It's a wonder that it could ever happen, you know, that it could ever come together. But then the other part is that I just get to spend all day making things, which can be frustrating. And the whole process, every creative I think will say that you always have periods of drought and you have periods of flood. And for me to be able to sit down, like come to work and just make things, which is that's how I played when I was little, you know, I essentially come to work and play. And we take it, you know, there's a lot more involved. There's a lot more, you know, we don't just, it's not flippant. We don't just, oh, you know, whatever. You know, there are late nights. There's a lot of stress. But when you get to make things, and especially on the days like, you know, when you've gone through the design process and actually get to go down and spend a day putting it together, that's just what I love, is I love making things. So
that's awesome.
All right.
Well, thank you, Seth, for your time. Our guest this week, again, has been Seth Karlstrom. And below this video will be some links to some of his works. And then there's a comment section. So if you haven't had a chance yet, please leave a comment. Feel free to ask a question to Seth, and we'll see if we can get him to respond. Thank you for joining us this week. Seth, we're going to turn it to you for some last comments.
Thank you so much. Again, I guess the moral of the story, I'll just hit on it one more time, is go out and go out. No, just the real education occurs, I think, when someone has a moment of truly, this is mine. They own it. And the easiest way, I think, for that to happen is to really actually pour in to a single person. Especially a young person, to be able to mentor them and invest some of your time if you know you seem important to them, and you will. I'm gonna guess. I mean, this is Rotary Club. I think that everybody here, if you were able to pour into a young person, they would value that tremendously. And that is so huge, and especially when people are going to college and they pop out the other side and they're like, "Wow, where's my job?" You know, you need to give them ownership over what they've learned. They haven't become something; they're still them, but they've been trained to do something. So that's my spiel.
Some wise words. Thank you so much, Seth, and thank you, Christy, for introducing us to Seth. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for joining us this week. Bye, everyone.